This is Enda Skahal from We Banjo 3, and you're listening to Your Morning Coffee, the podcast with Jay Gilbert and Michael Etchart. Weekly music news for the new music business.
From the team at Billboard, analyzing the 12 top music business stories of 2026 so far.
From Mark Mulligan over at Media, the future of the music creator economy.
And from Kristen Robinson at Billboard, the RIAA, IFPI, and more come together to create a system for tagging AI-generated songs.
And from CBC News, StubHub's marketplace for fans is run by a mass scalper according to SEC filings. Well, that does not seem like a good thing. Jay, we've got so many stories to cover. We're glad you're here. We're going to start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! The revolution is at hand!
Your morning coffee is on the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Well, Jay, it is so good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you.
Oh, my God. We've been yapping for a good 45 minutes, almost an hour. And because there's so many things to cover. And amongst them was how much we enjoyed our conversation with Manuel Musalam over at Deezer. That was a special episode we did, and we have posted it. And boy, I found that so fascinating.
Yeah, it was really interesting. You know, we talk about how Deezer punches above their weight, and Manuel is their VP of Research and Data Science. And, you know, Deezer says that nearly half of what's uploaded to streaming today is AI. So we talked to the guy whose job it is to catch it. So Manuel and Deezer have been industry leaders in AI detection, fraud, fighting fraud, and the user-centric versus pro rata payout model. Coming up this week, we're going to sit down with our friend Jamie Marconet from Luminate to dig into their mid-year report. So look for that later in the week. Can't wait.
Yes, indeed. We always look forward to that. And we've done this a few times, and it's always something we look forward to. Let's talk about some deals this week. This is from Tim Ingham over at Music Business Worldwide. CVC Capital Partners to acquire a majority stake in DistroKid. So they have agreed to acquire a majority stake in DistroKid, the independent music distribution platform.
Right. Insight Partners, a longtime DistroKid backer, they'll retain a significant minority stake in the company, and that's according to the announcement.
And another one from Tim Ingham, again at Music Business Worldwide. It's a done deal. Primary Wave's acquisition of Cobalt has closed. Their 10-figure acquisition is one of the music business' biggest stories of the year.
Yeah, last we heard back in March, the two parties had entered into a definitive agreement, and that was subject to customary conditions. The transaction was expected to be finalized in Q3 of this year.
That's right. And just 7 days into that Q3 period, boom, it is closed. Deal size? How about $1.5 billion, give or take? Money wired, and it's done.
That's right. Well, AI is all over the music industry news lately. You can't avoid it. It's quickly becoming an essential tool for a lot of aspects of the music industry. There's good things and there's bad things, and we try to talk through those. But here's one example. There was a story by David Boyle at Audience Strategies, and the headline was, "What is a comeback worth?"
Yeah, this is a case study about using Vibrate's data plus Claude to build a quick, transparent valuation model for Tiny Tempa's music catalog, comparing its worth before and after his 2026 comeback.
So here's what you need to know. The workflow, not the number, is the story. The point of the story is the method, not the headline. Analysis that used to need a data analyst, weeks of work, and a bespoke code, well, now it's done in an afternoon through conversation with every number traceable back to the data.
Right. So AI didn't replace judgment. It accelerated the arithmetic. Claude handled data pulling and calculation. The humans still decided which assumptions were fair and whether to trust the output. Boyle calls this the check, edit, own principle.
Yeah, and finally, Vibrate's MCP connector that we were talking about last week, it lets AI tools like Claude and ChatGPT query the music data directly in natural language. This really levels a playing field for artists, managers, labels, distributors, etc., to really understand what's happening with their audience and business without being a data scientist.
Yeah, boy, that's exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Really, really cool. We got a little bit of Grammy news. This is from the Recording Academy. How to submit your music for the 2027 Grammys. Deadlines, Grammy nominations, Grammy voting processes, and more. So the online entry process, the OEP, for the 2027 Grammys is here. The online entry process is the window in which all eligible recordings, videos, and more are submitted for consideration to be included on the ballot at the 2027 Grammy Awards, which takes place live Sunday, February 7th at Crypto.com Arena in LA and across ABC, Disney Plus, and Hulu.
That's right. I'm a voting member of the Academy, so these stories are particularly interesting. The second one this week about the Recording Academy, the headline, this is from Billboard, by the way, the headline was Recording Academy invites more than 4,000 to join its ranks, its largest class of invitees to date. And the short version is the Recording Academy is issuing invitations to more than 4,000 music creators and industry pros to join its membership. The invitations went out last Thursday, July 9th. This is the third consecutive year that the Academy has invited 3,500 or more new members and the largest class of invitees to date. It's part of a concerted effort to expand and diversify its membership.
Yeah, good stuff. An interesting piece from Andre Payne over at Music Week. The Rolling Stones release new album with Roblox activation. So the Rolling Stones dropped their 25th studio album. Yes, their 25th album, Foreign Tongues, on July 10th. It's on Polydor UK and Capitol here in the States. And instead of a standard rollout, they built an entire Roblox universe around it.
Yeah, this is super cool. Roblox tapped over a dozen of their community to reinterpret the band's Hot Lips logo into avatar wear, some of which converts to limited edition physical merch via the in-game Shopify integration tied directly to the band's own store. That's genuinely a reusable template, virtual co-design, real-world merch, direct-to-store checkout, no separate drop mechanics needed. Super interesting with the Rolling Stones and Roblox.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we get into the big stories, Jay, I say we thank our sponsors. Support for the show comes from Cosign. Cosign is a reimagined publishing administration platform launched by independent music publisher Cobalt.
Yes, it is. Cosign is designed for artists, producers, songwriters. It allows creators to collect global publishing royalties with simple, transparent, and no long-term contracts.
Indeed. In its first year of operation, Cosign was named one of the 10 most innovative music companies by Fast Company. Find out why at cosignmusic.com. A lot of great folks over there. And speaking of great folks, I get to hang out with now. This is episode 310, and so almost 400 different episodes. I get to hang out with my good friend Jay Gilbert, music business consultant, educator, curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter, and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups.
And the best part of my week is I get to have virtual coffee with Mike Etchart, longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Music Group.
All right, well, let's jump into the big stories. This first one, it's by 7 writers at Billboard: Dan Rees, Melinda Newman, Kristen Robinson, Bill Donahue, Elizabeth Diltz-Marshall, Rachel Scharf, and Ariel King. That's a big list.
Yeah.
The headline is analyzing the 12 top music business stories of 2026 so far. So here's a rundown of Billboard's mid-year look at the biggest music business stories of 2026. And again, that's just so far.
That's right. Here's number 1. BMG and Concord merge. Bertelsmann's BMG acquired Concord, combining 2 major independents into roughly $2 billion in annual revenue and what Billboard called a quiet fourth major. Thomas Kosfeld became the chairman. Bob Valentine runs the company entity as the CEO. Expect them to compete for catalog deals and possibly shop for their own distribution arm.
Another interesting story. Number 2, Primary Wave buys Cobalt for $7 billion in combined assets. So Primary Wave and some of their estates that they control include Prince, Whitney Houston, and Bob Marley, acquired the world's largest independent publisher from Francisco Partners, with Billboard estimating the sale price north of $1.5 billion. Cobalt CEO Laurent Hubert stays on. The companies operate as standalone units.
Yeah, big story number 3. Live Nation and Ticketmaster lose their antitrust case. In April, a jury found Live Nation exercises anti-competitive control over venues, artists, and ticketing. Live Nation is appealing, and it's still unclear whether a court-ordered Ticketmaster breakup will actually happen.
And the number 4 music industry story, AI music policy comes to a head across DSPs. Deezer reported AI-generated uploads jumped from 10% to 44% of daily uploads year over year. iHeartRadio banned AI content from radio. Bandcamp banned AI-made music outright. And Spotify took a more measured path, rolling out artist verification badges, AI credits, and a new licensing deal with UMG for an AI remixing tool. UMG and Sony's lawsuits against Suno and Udio continue.
Big story number 5, indie distribution reshuffles. 3 moves landed at once. Virgin Music officially acquired Downtown Music, Fuga, CD Baby, Songtrust, under the UMG umbrella. Warner Music bought Israeli distributor Revelator to bolster ADA, and Believe launched U.S. distribution and label services to fill the gap Downtown left.
And the number 6 big story, Kerry Wasserman steps down and sells his agency. After Epstein-related documents surfaced showing Wasserman exchanged emails with Ghislaine Maxwell, no criminal implication, artists including Chappell Roan, Orville Peck, and Chelsea Cutler left his agency. Wasserman sold his shares and stepped down. The agency was renamed The Team and is fielding bids from UTA, WIM Excel Sports, and Providence Equity Partners.
Yes, sir. Number 7, Bill Ackman tries to buy UMG, then bails. Pershing Square made a non-binding $64 billion merger offer in April, which UMG's board rejected after pushback from top shareholder Bolloré Group. Ackman then sold his entire stake. UMG has since adopted some of his transparency recommendations anyway.
And the number 8 story, Sony buys Recognition, closing out the Hypnosis saga. Sony Music Publishing, backed by Singapore's GIC, bought Recognition Music Group from Blackstone for over $3.5 billion. The catalog built from Hypnosis's Shakira, Fleetwood Mac, and Diana Ross rights, among others.
Among many others, that's right. Number 9, major labels ask the Supreme Court to review a copyright termination ruling. A January decision won by songwriter Cyril Vetter let artists reclaim overseas rights via termination, not just U.S. rights, upending decades of practice. The majors petitioned SCOTUS, warning of industry-wide disruption. A decision on whether the court takes the case is expected this fall.
And story number 10, Clive Davis died at 94 on June 22nd after 60 years in the industry. Columbia, Arista, J Records, and a career defined by discovering and reviving artists from Whitney Houston to Aretha Franklin.
Yeah, true legend. A couple more. Number 11, the No Fakes Act advances. The artists start trademarking their voices. The federal deepfake/voice cloning bill cleared the Senate Judiciary Committee. Meanwhile, Taylor Swift, Lionel Richie, and the Backstreet Boys have filed to trademark their voices as a stopgap.
And the last one, number 12, gas prices spike from the Iran conflict, hitting touring hard. After the U.S. and Israel began bombing Iran back in February and the Strait of Hormuz shut down, gas prices rose roughly 50% and flight costs jumped too, squeezing tour budgets, especially bus tours and anything relying on generators. Wow.
Right. And here are a few observations from Mike and myself. You know, consolidation is the year's real theme, right? BMG Concord, Primary Wave and Cobalt, Virgin and Downtown. They all point to independents either merging up or getting absorbed into major adjacent structures. You know, it's worth asking whether independence still means what it used to.
Another important observation we've noticed, AI policy is fragmenting by platform, not converging. That's a natural through line given our recent AI and labels research. DSPs are each picking their own lane, ban versus tag versus license, faster than legislation or litigation is resolving anything.
Yeah, a couple more observations. One is that legal risk is now existential level for some players. The Vetter termination ruling and the Live Nation verdict are both the kind of decisions that could restructure entire revenue models, not just individual companies.
The last point, macro geopolitical shocks are now touring industry shocks. The Iran-driven gas price spike is a reminder that the live sector's cost structure is exposed to forces well outside the music business.
Yeah,
sure.
Everything's more expensive. Hotels, buses, gas,
everything.
Food. It's crazy to try to make money on the road these days. You know, this next piece is from our friend Drew Thurlow. And he posted this. It's a very short piece, but I sent a note to him because I thought it was spot on. Drew wrote online, he said, here are 5 wrong music plus AI narratives, right? So here's narrative number 1. AI-assisted music isn't real. He writes that it would be very hard to find any music today that's not AI-assisted.
Yeah, the second narrative is generative AI just copies existing songs. Drew points out they don't. That's not how the models work.
Narrative number 3, AI will replace musicians. He says that after almost 4 years, we have the complete opposite evidence.
Yeah, narrative number 4 is using AI as anti-craft. Well, drum machines, DAWs, and synths would like a word, he says.
And the final one, number 5, real artists don't use AI. Well, Suno Studio is all over Nashville and all over the Billboard Top 100. So great piece there by Drew Thurlow.
But it also points out, you know, how to have the discussion about AI, how complicated it is because, you know, the default is just, well, it's just, you're just giving a prompt and a song is created.
That's right.
That is the hugely AI, of course, but when you're talking about mastering or things in digital audio workstations, all of this stuff, it's really
noise
hard
reduction, breaking up stems, and you know, you and I talked about this earlier. These platforms that allow you to create a song with a text prompt, that's sort of a novelty. What's happening is real artists are using it to put a string section into a demo or a horn section, or they're using it to make a demo sound a certain way so they can pitch it. They're using it very creatively in the studio. You know, we talked to Bobby Osinski. We had him on the podcast, and he took us to school on a lot of, you know, he wrote that musician's AI handbook. Mm-hmm. So it's, yes, there's some nefarious things, deep fakes and voice cloning, and there are some things that, you know, might be nefarious, but there are a lot of legitimate uses for AI, and we'll try to cover both sides.
Yeah, absolutely. Our next story is from our friend Mark Mulligan over at Media, the future of the music creator economy. starts by saying AI is described as a black swan event that's fusing two previously separate stories, the creator economy and the traditional music industry. Generative AI music users nearly tripled between 2023 and 2025, adding far more users than the entire global population of musicians grew over the same period.
Yeah, I love reading the things that Mark Mulligan and his team put together. They're so smart. He goes on to say that, let's look at the framing. AI isn't creating new dynamics so much as accelerating trends that were already building before generative tools arrived. One of the key stats from the report is that global musicians grew 33% from 2020 to 2025, while music creators, including generative AI users, grew 167% to reach almost 149 million. Generative AI users are the fastest growing segment.
Right. The report goes on to say generative AI is projected to represent 38% of all music software, sounds, and services revenue by 2033. And DAWs, that's digital audio workstations, remain the center of gravity, but increasingly as AI DAWs.
Yeah, we were calling that GAWs, right? Generative audio workstations. So here's what you need to know. The attention battleground. Mark points out that the line between listening and creating is blurring. Most consumers will still primarily listen, but a growing share want to spend some time creating. AI lowers that barrier significantly.
Right. He goes on to talk about funnel dilution versus volume growth. For creator tools companies, AI brings in a wave of novice and casual creators, which dilutes conversion rates but increases the sheer number of new buyers. For DSPs, this creates new competition for time and spend.
His next point is about beyond the copyright conversation. The report argues that industry is understandably fixated on copyright/royalties and creator tools companies on integrating AI into workflows. But the bigger story is AI's potential to convert millions of passive listeners into actively creative listeners.
Mark points out major labels are picking sides, not just suing. So the piece argues the lawsuits against AI companies are a distraction from the real story. Large rights holders are simultaneously striking deals with their preferred AI partners to gain leverage over competitors. UMG and Spotify's audio modification announcement is cited as a signal of how seriously labels are taking this.
Right. He also talks about cultural risk, and what he calls model collapse. The report flags a real concern that AI could normalize output toward a lowest common denominator average, smoothing out the outliers and idiosyncrasies that define music culture, framed as a bigger cultural risk for music than for general internet content.
And lastly, he ends with a rare bright spot of convergence. So media frames this as the creator economy and traditional music business finally merging, something they've tracked for years after the industry mostly resisted that merger. Well, really interesting observations for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
This next story, it's from our friend Kristen Robinson at Billboard. The RIAA, IFPI, and more come together to create system for tagging AI-generated songs. So here's a rundown of the Billboard article on the new AI song tagging initiative.
Right. So she writes that a coalition spanning both major label and independent trade groups, RIAA, IFPI, A2IM, etc., along with the Grammys, SAG-AFTRA, and the Human Artistry Campaign, they've come together to build a standardized labeling system for AI-generated music on streaming platforms. The model is explicitly modeled on the existing, quote-unquote, explicit content label.
Right, so two tiers are proposed. First, AI generated. So AI drove key instrumentals, lead vocals, or the song was created entirely via prompt. And AI assisted. That's AI touched some elements, but humans still performed lead vocals and instrumentals. No firm launch date yet. Labels are promised in the near future.
Right. The urgency stems partly from a Deezer stat cited in the piece that 44% of daily uploads to Deezer are now fully AI generated. And we talk about that with our interview with Manuel. Feeding industry anxiety that AI output could dilute the royalty pool meant for human artists, the same concern underlying the major's ongoing suit against Suno and Udio.
Right. So here's what you need to know about this article. So piggybacking on prior platform moves. This isn't the first tagging effort. Deezer built its own AI detection model back in 2025, and Spotify and Apple Music rolled out voluntary disclosure tools for labels and distributors earlier in 2026. Tidal went further back in June, requiring distributors to tag AI content before upload. This coalition effort is an attempt at an industry-wide standard rather than a patchwork of platform-specific systems.
Yeah, and who's responsible? That fight is still unresolved. Apple Music's Oliver Schuster is quoted making the case that labels and distributors, not platforms, need to own AI disclosures since much of what's delivered as label content may already contain undisclosed AI. Tidal has staked out a similar position. This is a real fault line worth tracking. Platforms want upstream accountability, but distributors and labels may push back on being the compliance layer.
Right. Another point, DEMA's response leans into metadata infrastructure. So Graham Davis over at DEMA welcomed the move, but framed it as part of a broader push for standardized metadata across the creator-to-fan pipeline, name-checking DDEX, a detail worth watching if you want to dig into the technical standards side of the story.
Right. And finally, Suno's response is notably noncommittal. Rather than endorsing the two-tag system, Suno pointed to its own investments in watermarking and audio fingerprinting and argued it should ultimately be up to the artists and platforms to decide how to handle disclosure, a subtly different stance from the label's push for a mandatory standardized label.
Wow, that's really interesting. Really interesting. And our final story, it's from Dave Seglin's Kathleen Coughlin and Ariel Tosman over at CBC News. StubHub's marketplace for fans is run by a mass scalper, SEC filings reveal. So here's what you need to know about this article. The CBC dug into StubHub's SEC filings and found that CEO Eric Baker isn't just running the platform. He's also part owner and managing director of Andro Capital, a fund that resells millions of dollars worth of tickets on StubHub itself. The filings also reveal StubHub has a deal with an affiliate of Baker's fund to provide short-term financing to other mass scalpers, helping them buy up large ticket quantities to resell on the platform.
Yeah, our friend Randy Nichols made me aware of this story this week. And this directly contradicts StubHub's public positioning. The company told CBC it's just a technology platform that connects independent buyers and sellers, comparing itself to eBay while marketing itself as a marketplace for fans.
Well, let's bring a little context to this whole concept.
Yeah.
StubHub moved $9.2 billion in tickets in 2025 and is reportedly the largest player in ticket resale. Industry estimates, including a 2021 UK inquiry, suggest 70 to 80% of tickets on global resale sites are controlled by mass scalpers, not individual fans.
That's crazy. 70 to 80%. So here's what you need to know. Let's talk about the trust gap. Fans believe they're buying from other fans. The platform's own CEO has skin in the game, in this scalping game. That's a credibility problem StubHub can't easily spin away.
No, how about a conflict of interest? A marketplace operator financing and profiting from sellers on its own platform is a structural conflict, not just an optics issue.
Right, and let's look at the artist-fan relationship. Sources like band manager Randy Nichols, who we just talked about, he frames this as bigger than individual scalping. Industrial scale resale distorts pricing and damages the direct connection between artists and their audiences.
How about regulatory momentum? Between this story, the World Cup ticket cancellations, and existing investigations and lawsuits, there's a building case for tighter secondary market regulation, worth watching for how it could reshape the resale policy.
Yeah, and the last thing that we'll say on this is that, it's legal, but it's ethically murky. The article is careful to note StubHub's business model is legal. The controversy really is about the disclosure and self-dealing, not necessarily illegality.
Wow. Man, oh man, oh man. What a kind of a bombshell article for sure.
Yeah.
Well, it is time to wrap up the show, believe it or not. We went so fast today. Big thanks to our sponsor, Cosign. We certainly appreciate their participation in the show. And if you'd like to advertise in the podcast or the newsletter, go visit yourmorning.coffee. The music was by our friends, the Licorice Quartet, and if you enjoy the show, please just tell one friend. Jay and I would certainly appreciate that. So on behalf of my good friend Jay Gilbert, I'm Mike Etchart. Thanks for listening in, and we'll be back next week on the Your Morning Coffee podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.